In this week's video, I'll be building a bioactive terrarium out of Zilla's 12 by 12 by 18, which is a perfect home for frogs and small geckos and lizards. If you'd like a terrarium, message me on Instagram or comment down below. Here's all the materials I used. There'll be a list of everything in the description. First, I needed to pop the back end of the top off for easy access so I could easily plant everything from the top. And then it was time for the background. This is a simple little foam background. I would like to do some customs at some point. But yeah, I just inserted it and pressed it down in there. Then it was time for the clay balls for the drainage layer. This is going to go underneath the dirt and the moisture is going to seep down into there. And it's going to hold everything nicely to help with plant growth and a bioactive ecosystem. Then I just flattened out the clay balls to make one smooth layer that'll help with the next steps. Followed by the divider between the drainage layer and the substrate. I tried to flatten it out, but it didn't do much until I put some dirt on top. This is my first time trying to go for a complicated and effective bioactive substrate layer. So it's going to have three different components. The first being Zoomed's Reptisoil, along with some Sphagnum moss and dead plant matter for isopod food. Then I added some water just to make it more ready for plants and easier to work with. Mixed it up. Really wish I wore gloves for this part. It was now time to add the dirt. I had tried to do sort of a diagonal slope towards the back left corner, but it didn't end up turning out that way at all. This is probably the most tedious part, and I think filling it with dirt is pretty self-explanatory. Next is one of the most important steps, which is known to reptile keepers as the hardscape, which is just putting all of your rocks and climbing and hides and switching things around, playing with it, and figuring out the layout of your terrarium. I wish I'd thought about this before I put all of the dirt in, but I had originally planned on kind of half burying this stick. I actually, a lot of times, will try to lay everything out before I even start filling it with anything. I think I've had a basic layout planned for weeks. Then I had this large piece of wood. I'd kind of planned on it being the centerpiece of the build besides the plants, and it was going to be a very good climbing opportunity, especially to get to the top for heat. Oftentimes you don't get the hardscape right the first time you put things in, so I kind of just was rotating things, pulling on them so I could get it close to how I envisioned the finished product. I wish I'd shown this piece of wood off more before I put it in, especially because you can't really see it because of the glare from the sun. But it's kind of an L-shaped log with a hole at the top. So I went ahead and planted a plant inside of this wood piece. And I just, like I said, I wish there was a better shot of it. And of course, we're going to need a water bowl. I really like this small rock one, along with this stick that took forever to put in the way I wanted it, but it ended up being perfect. Then a random small stick. I don't even know what the point was of putting this in here, but it's there now. Comment down below what animal you think would go good in this terrarium as you're watching the build. I'm really curious to hear what you guys think. If there's one thing you really want to do when putting terrariums together is periodically wiping the dirt off the glass. It gets kicked up a lot when you're putting it in there and picking it up and moving it and putting things in. You don't want to be all the way done with plants and everything, and then you realize there's dirt on the side and you got to reach around a bunch of stuff. It might just be me, but it really bothers me to have that little bit of dirt there, so I do it throughout the build. Then it was time for the first plant. This is a ficus plant. I pulled it out, pulled as much of the dirt off as I could, and hosed it down because you really want to plant it with as little dirt as possible. Before I planted the ficus, I realized I forgot a step that I saw from the bio dude, which is stuffing the gap between your background and the glass with sphagnum moss. Just in case a gecko or some of its food tries to escape, you don't want it between the glass and the background because if your pet is back there, you're going to have to tear everything apart and it is not fun. I wanted to show as much as possible just so there was no confusion in case somebody wants to do something like this and you see all of the steps. But there's a lot of little things that go into it and kind of moving bits of dirt around and getting things perfectly how you want it. So if I hadn't cut a lot of stuff out, this video could have been 45 minutes. So let me know if you want a shorter, more entertaining 15-minute video or if you want to see literally everything. Plant number 2 is a bromeliad. I don't really care for plants. I only deal with them for the reptile stuff, but bromeliads are probably my favorite. Somehow I didn't seem to get planting the bromeliad on camera, but here it is. I don't remember what this is. It's some vine thing that I had that was overgrown from my gecko terrarium. Couldn't really see me planting this because I was blocking it, but I put it in that little piece of wood with the hole in it that I was talking about earlier. Hopefully it'll kind of just grow across the bottom and cover the ground in a way. With all 3 of those plants done, I placed some green moss over about half the dirt that was left. You're supposed to get it wet before you use it, so I had a cup just so I could dip it in there real quick, squeeze it out like a sponge, and place it around the bottom. I think it added a very nice touch. After the moss, I did a similar thing with leaf litter. I believe these are magnolia leaves. They add a nice visual touch, but they're also good for that whole circle of life bioactive ecosystem. These are isopods, which are essentially roly-polies and the workhorse of a bioactive terrarium. They're going to eat the leftover plant and animal matter like shed skin and poo. They're going to poop it back out into the soil, which is going to provide extra nutrients to the plants, and they grow better. Next are springtails, which are all those little white dots. They do something very similar to the isopods. I don't remember the exact difference in roles. I'm not a scientist. But they're not moving. They were outside in a plastic container in the Arizona heat for 2 hours. There's a chance I might have microwaved and killed them. So we'll see what happens with that. Might have to buy more. Before I move it inside and put it on some grow lights, I gave it a good mist. They need a lot of extra water when they're first planted because of the shock of being in a new place. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's what all the people who know what they're doing say. So, extra water. And that's going to do it. Again, let me know if you would like a terrarium. If you like this week's video, like and subscribe. And we still have some more plants and terrariums on the way.